everyone! In this video, we'll be talking about the part writing rules for going between triads whose roots are a second or seventh apart. The part writing method for going between triads whose roots are a second or seventh apart is actually pretty straightforward, because chords that are this distance apart will have no common tones. The method we use to go between chords with this relationship is called contrary to the bass. All it means is that you will move the upper three voices in contrary motion to the bass to the nearest chord tone in your second chord. Again, we will still always double the root. Look at this first example to see what I mean. In the key of C major, we're going from the 4-chord F major to the 5-chord G major. Our bass voice ascends by whole step. That means our upper three voices will need to move downward to the nearest chord tone in G major. Starting with the soprano voice, we have the third of the F major triad, or A. She's going to move down by whole step to become the root of the G major triad, or G. In our alto voice, we have the pitch F, or the root of our F major triad. This pitch will move down by a third to D to become the fifth of the G major triad. And lastly, the tenor voice on the pitch C, which is the fifth of our F major triad, will move down by a half step to B natural to become the third of our G major triad. Now let's check our work for bad parallels. The soprano voice moves down by a step. The alto voice moves down by a third, so no parallel motion there. The tenor voice moves down by a half step, but it's a sixth away from the soprano, so we don't have any bad parallel motion there. It's not the distance of a fifth or an octave. And lastly, our bass voice moves up by step, so we don't have any parallel motion between bass or the upper three voices. Now let's do another example together. Still in the key of C major, we're going to go from the 3-chord, or A minor, to the 5-chord, or G major. Our bass voice in root position will move from A down by step to G. This means that our upper three voices will need to move up to the nearest chord tone in the key of G major. This means our upper three voices will need to move up to the nearest chord tone for the G major triad. Let's start with the soprano voice. A will need to move up by step to the nearest chord tone in G major, or the third of our G major triad, B natural. Now let's do the tenor voice. The third of our A minor triad, C, will need to move up by step to the pitch D, or become the fifth of our G major triad. Lastly, the alto voice is on the pitch E in our first chord, or the fifth of A minor, will need to move up a minor third to G to become the root of our G major triad. Notice that this also gives us the doubled root, which we should be doing in all of our root position part writing right now in this class. Here's what this one sounds like. Again, just for fun, let's check for bad parallels. The soprano voice moves up by step, okay. The alto voice moves up by a minor third, no parallel motion there. Our tenor voice moves up by step, but A and C are a sixth away from each other, so we don't have parallel fifths or octaves. And our bass voice moves down by step, contrary to the upper three. To review, root position part writing between triads that are a second or seventh apart is pretty straightforward because these two chords will not have any notes in common. All you need to remember is to move the notes from the first chord to the second chord in contrary motion to the bass to the nearest chord tone. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.